called the meeting to order. Ethan Hamilton's not going to be here today. I call the May 23rd, 2024 meeting of the School Building Committee to order. It's 4:11 p.m. and first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Ron, I just turn it over to you.
That's easy. It's got to sit down, but so we want to present here today. We've been working, and first of all, I want to congratulate the district. The amount of work that they've done is incredible in this short amount of time. We are putting together an ed plan, meaning the district is putting together an ed plan, and we are trying to keep up with them as they're doing this, and what we're doing is breaking down all of their vision for this school. And we've been through the visioning process. What we've come up with in the visioning process, and this is an educational diagram that was pretty consistent amongst all of the tables that were involved. And this is an educational diagram that basically says, what if we have this heart of the school and everything else kind of surrounds that? And then we come back and say, okay, we read your ed plan, we hear things like neighborhoods, we hear things like themes, we hear things like separated from neighborhoods. We want to make sure we get it right. So we've taken all of the information that's been vetted, and to date, we've started to fill out, and in fact, we've completed filling out a spatial spreadsheet. So how do you take that big vision that the district's been talking about in all these community meetings and these visionary meetings and turn it into an actual building? We look at every one of your existing spaces, and then we compare that to what do we need for new construction. And then we compare that, you'll see the red, the green, and the yellow. The yellow means that you are undersized, the yellow means you're pretty much within the guidelines of the MSBA. So everything's that red, you're less than what the MSBA would support. Everything in green, you're actually more. So what we need to do is demonstrate that to the MSBA and then demonstrate what's going on in you. We've listed all of your existing classrooms, but then we say there's only 37 new classrooms going in there because they're all going to be sized at a specific size based on the MSBA's variation of space. These are all your actual sizes. So then in the end, they're able to look at what's your exact square footage of your existing building and what are you proposing from there. So as we do that, and that's the space programming, and we'll talk a little bit more separately on that, separate topic later in today's meeting, but that's what we've done. And then again, we take all of those spaces and we say, what does that actually look like? So this is to scale. These are basically all of your general classrooms. These are your science labs. You can see the gym is much bigger than a general classroom. So now we've taken that whole spreadsheet and we've put it into these so-called bubble diagrams that look like little squares. We've also categorized them as to whether or not it's administrative space, art and music space, custodial space, core academic space, circulation that you'll see in the diagrams. So this is in essence all the puzzle pieces that are going to come together to make your school. So the next step is
what is this? Is this the current school? This is the future?
The future school, the proposed school.
Okay. Can I do my
Please do.
If you go back a slide, I think we were already discussed, but it looks like the total area for new construction is smaller than the existing. Is that an accurate?
In terms of your classroom spaces, yes.
Classroom spaces.
And when we go over the spatial program, you'll see how we've accounted for that. So what we're doing is a couple of things. The first thing that we're doing is we're taking a look at how your existing school works today. More importantly, we've looked at every space during the normal school day, how many teachers are in that space, how many students are in that space, and at what point during the schedule. So that allows us to say every period of every day, you have one teacher or two teachers, you have between 18 and 26 kids in that classroom. There are some other classrooms that have more or less, but nobody has more than 100 because 100% utilization means you're in there every class day. we are seeing on average, every one of your school, in fact, more than average, almost all of your classes have an 83% utilization rate. When we're done going through this program space, every one of these spaces that are core academic, art, classroom, music, they will have just about the same 83% utilization rate or better. Because what we're trying to do is make sure that you're not overbuilding, but also that you're not underbuilding. The MSBA is also very good at doing that themselves. When you take their spreadsheet and you type in, we have 1,025 students, they immediately calculate within their spreadsheet that you need 37 general classrooms. This school right now has 46 general classrooms. So we need to reconcile that somehow. So how do we stay within the MSBA guidelines while at the same time making sure that you have space for 46 general classrooms that take place right now? So you're going to see in the spreadsheet that we're going to share with you in a few minutes exactly how we go about doing exactly that. So just this proposed section, which you'll see later on in the meeting when we talk about the program. These are all of your proposed spaces. This is not set in stone. So when we submit this in June, July, we still have the opportunity to fine-tune this with the MSBA in the next step. It is that step that you get to in September, October, where the MSBA will say, this is exactly what you're building. This is exactly what we will participate in terms of funding. So all of that takes place later on after the summer. Right now, prior to the summer starting, we're trying to finish this first phase, which is affectionately called PDP, which is Preliminary Design Program. And the word preliminary there is the important word. Because when we get to the next phase of PSR, that's your preferred schematic report. So this is your preferred school that you're going forward. So the first thing we did was we took all of those little puzzle pieces using the educational diagram that the visioning process came up with. And we organized them in such a way that meets the vision and also works with your existing school. So this would be, say, the first floor of your existing school. And the first floor would be, we're repurposing your gym, we're repurposing your weight room, there's going to be an addition of locker rooms onto the back end of that. We're going to repurpose your auditorium, repurpose your band room, and then we're going to start infilling all of your administrative space that's in here now in classroom space into new spaces. That then gets us to this area right here, where that stair is. That stair is strategically placed there, because that's the end of your existing school. All of this becomes your new addition.
Ron, can I just interrupt you for a second? Because just in case people are watching, to be clear, this is a sort of theoretical add reno option.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we're going to come up with a couple of different options today that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So with this add reno option, the phasing would be that we build all the new academic space first, and that's 3 stories of academic space. Then what happens is everybody that's in this space, and we build the addition onto your gym. Everybody that's in this space moves into here temporarily. Then we renovate this space. When we're done renovating this space, the portables or the modulars that are outside and this area of the building come down. So in effect, and you'll see in the next step here that all of this is directly under your science labs. Because when we get to the second floor, these are all of your science labs. We're going to add some more academic space up here. And then that's the magic line of your existing. And then that's the second floor of new space organized around the vision. Oh, that's the second floor, and then this is the third floor. The idea of this addition renovation is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, this comes down, step 5 is we finish all the earthwork. Nothing has been figured out yet, because this is very high level what-if concept as a new an ad reno option. Any questions on the ad reno option? And what we're trying to do in this ad reno is we know you've spent some money on the gym. We know you spent some money on the science labs. So the question is, how do we come up with an ad reno that does that? Now, there are some concerns with this one. We're going to talk about pros and cons of all of these options. The initial knee-jerk concerns were it's a pretty good distance between 3 stories of academic space and everything else going on. In addition to that, you'll see in the ed plan that's going to be presented by the school district, they're talking about multidisciplinary education taking place. Your science remains on an island. It's already on an island, which has been a problem that we've been asked to solve in the new in the project, and it remains on an island.
So it could be a bottleneck on there, that is, right?
Yeah, so this is, right, so that's just exactly right, you know, so that's, but it's similar, you know, we want to keep our circulation the same and similar. So it all works, it's just a long walk, a very long walk.
How long is this going to take?
So the phasing, so that's, you know, one of the big questions is, how do you do this? So this is multiple years. To build this piece right here would probably be 18 to 24 months. Then all of these folks move out to here probably in the summer. So during the summer, everybody moves. At that same time, we're going to take spaces like this and repurpose them to accommodate all these folks who need to move in here. This right here is going to take at least a year, not 18 months. We're going to have to take the theater offline because all your theater and all your gymnasium spaces have to become MAAB and ADA compliant. So we can't just leave the space. We can't just say, look, it's existing, we're not going to touch it. Because the codes in Massachusetts, if you start spending a certain amount of money based on the assessed value of the property in the school, everything has to become compliant. Now, in addition to that, so these spaces would need to be scheduled, taken offline, figured out, because we can tell you that, you know, you've heard the term summer slammer before, where schools try to do something during the summer and everything else. Spaces like this are just going to take longer than the summer. You can't do this in 11 weeks or 12 weeks. It just, you know, physically can't be done. So we could break it into pieces and do one summer, one the next summer. But ultimately, you're looking at just rough numbers, 2 years, 3 years. This could be a 4-year project. Time is money. So remember that even though all the nuts and bolts cost a certain amount, all the labor costs a certain amount, mobilizing, remobilizing, coming back and forth to the site adds a lot of money to the job. So like a construction company would tell you, time is money. Because the more time they spend on it, the more they spend in general conditions and so forth. From a site perspective, the gray is what you would end up with as a school. The reds come down, you turn that into parking or whatever amenities we're looking for the rest of the project. This wall right here becomes an exterior wall. All this goes away. All of this would need to be, well, this is our new addition, but all of this needs to be treated in such a way to bring it up either to the existing building code or to the new code. We have 2 options there. The existing building code doesn't get you to where you need to be for like your stretch code in North Attleboro. The new building code obviously does. And that has a lot to do with future operational costs. So the better insulated this is for the future, the more money you save in terms of operations. So the second idea is a 2-story building, and it's a new building. And you would come in, the entrance here, take a left for all of your athletics, take a right for all of your performing arts. But as you enter into the heart of the school, there are the spaces that the visioning groups came up with in determining what needs to be in the heart of the school. And then you have 2 areas, 2 neighborhoods on each floor. And then when you get up to the second floor, again, you get the library that will be overlooking the front entrance space. You have all your double height spaces for volumes that you need within the building. And the yellow is the library that gets distributed for extended learning opportunities. And you end up with a 2-story building on the site, just in terms of time. So what does that mean? If you go something like this where it's new, your existing school just remains operational. You don't spend any money on temporary facilities. You don't spend any money on temporary outfitting this to support places that are moved. And this will take 24 months. So it cuts your construction in half. The new building comes down, then you finish the school. So that's option one.
How long does it usually take for
The new building can probably come down in a couple months, maybe 2 months. The second option is a 3-story building, where you come into the building here. Again, all of the spaces that want to be at the hub of the school, or want to be at the center and the heart of the school, or at the heart of the school. As you come in here, to the left, you have all of your athletics and performing arts. They may also have their own separate entrance for after hours used by the community, same as the other option. But this is broken down into 3 floors, and we have these different neighborhoods. And what you have here, and the difference here, is that this is a little bit more compact on the site, so a little bit less perimeter wall. It's a little bit taller, so your second floor is more energy efficient. There's no heat loss from the roof or the top of the second floor versus the slab of the second floor. And everything's a little bit more sort of in the heart, or around the heart, if you will. So on the other one, the neighborhoods are sort of, but both of them have pros and cons. They're not, these are initial, in the preliminary design program, so these are preliminary. These are concepts that really need a lot of work. This is just like the big idea right now of how could your project be developed based on the visioning that we've heard throughout the process. Any questions on this? Yeah.
On the new school options, we still currently owe 10 years of bonding payments on the science labs to the tune of $1.15 million. How would that be accounted for in the new school options?
I think any option you want to do, you want to talk to your bank and basically say, what can we do to roll that into a different bond, to roll that into the bond of this project? Kind of like refinancing your.
I think they'll like that, it's gonna get clawed back.
That's
In and out.
the grant will be clawed. The portion of the grant that isn't going to be depreciated will get clawed back. The debt still obviously has to be paid.
For any option.
Yeah, for any.
You said that the second option is less square, or takes up less space on the property.
It does, it's 3 stories,
Is
takes
there
up a
an
little less
advantage
space.
of that over, like in terms of our space that we have available for the building, is there an advantage of taking up less space? Just
Yeah,
because
so
we're working with?
it's a great question. So what you're going to end up with, in any one of these schemes, is you got to get all your fields that you need on the site. You have to get all the parking you need on the site. You have to get all the circulation around the site. The other thing we're trying to do, which you'll see at a later meeting, is separate the high school and middle school entrances. So now you don't have the high school students leaving at the same time the middle school parents are and everything else. So there's a lot of work to do on the site. The smaller the footprint of the building, obviously the more site you have to work with for everything outgoes.
I didn't know if you had seen any restrictions just based on the analysis that you've done.
There are restrictions, so there are setbacks from the property lines. There's some drainage that's going to have to take place around the entire site. And then there's parking and there's traffic. And so those are the kind of restrictions that we typically run into. So the MSBA guidelines, this is just an image again of all of the red does not comply with their guidelines. The yellow is okay, and the green is oversized for the spaces being used today. Same thing on the second floor, red, green, yellow. Obviously the library is a little big. And just when we look at just renovating the existing school, so if you just did like a repairs project and just renovated the existing school, you end up with spaces that are still not getting any daylight. So all of these gray spaces would have no natural daylight in the learning spaces. In addition to that, because of the money you'll spend replacing the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical, and adding a sprinkler system, you don't have a sprinkler system right now in the building, you're going to trigger that value that we just talked about. So you'll have to bring up this building into ADA and MAAB compliant. Your elevator doesn't even meet ADA compliant. So you'd have to your locker rooms, your theater, your band room, all of your restrooms, all these spaces need to be renovated. And the modulars don't get supported, but the MSBA would also not support any of this. So they would not support this option in terms of their participation, in terms of funding, because it does not meet your educational needs. So this would be solely on the school
Is
district.
this the base repair you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful how we frame that about the MSB not supporting the base repair. I wouldn't be so certain. I'm not saying anyone else would support it. I'm just saying I'm not sure if that's the case.
I understand the nuance that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just for comparative basis, right, what ends up happening is in our experience anyways, when you look at these on a kind of cost basis, these ones end up being as much or more expensive than when you're looking at reno or new basis, just based on the nuance of reimbursement. But I appreciate the point.
Yeah, and I just mean, all I mean is, I don't think we should be definitive about a comment like that. The MSB would tell you you're wrong, be that definitive. And just, let's play it out. We've got a summer to play this.
So what we need to do is demonstrate to them that whether or not this meets the end.
It's not, again, I'd just be careful about
Okay.
it with the MSB. That's all.
Do you want to say something, Joe?
No, it just that, but I do want to, but they still want us to do this exercise, right?
Yes.
MSBA requires us to do
We
this.
have to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's basically the, sorry. That's the presentation. Did anybody have any questions?
So just like for context, so you guys remember, we're going through options under the preliminary design plan, which is being submitted in July. We're going through options that we're going to tell them these are the 4 options we're going to continue to study through the next phase of the preferred schematic. So a lot of that, because that preferred schematic has to be submitted in October, decisions around the preferred schematic are going to really start to take shape during the summer. Which one of the 4, and because then that has to be estimated, and we develop that a little bit for that preferred schematic report. So that's why you'll hear tonight at the community forum for people to pay attention, but like everybody, because a lot happens in the summer, which is to stay on schedule, which is typically not a time to get a lot of attention.
Not to jump ahead, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm right though, but so we have a community forum tonight. Community won't see this tonight because we're not there yet, right? But on June 18th, which is the next community forum after tonight, we'll be able to show them some of these options.
Right. So none of, like, this is just kind of like a big picture.
Yeah.
On June 18th, when we present to the community, they'll see something that's more, it's got the site involved, it's got a little bit more information, and it's a little bit more, like, in other words, this received comments from the working group. Those comments have not been.
So we'll effectively be presenting, sort of pursuing, whatever the word is, 4 options. The base repair.
So base repair,
ad reno,
and the 2 new options.
2 new, okay.
And the reason for that is we can look at all sorts of ad rental options, but we're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to be very practical in our approach to this, and we're trying to give you the biggest bang for your buck. And as we just talked about in terms of time, you can imagine if we started piecemealing something together and doing this in phases over 5, 6, 7 years, which some school districts do. But when you get to the end, they say, I can't believe how much time we spent, I can't believe how much money we spent. And most, not all, regret it in terms of saying, what's the return on investment, what's the educational value of this student? So, and we're not saying we're pushing towards new.
I'm just wearing the town manager hat for 1 second here. And I'll go with your 4-year build-out, right? Because this is going to require debt exclusion and approval by the voters, right? But if you did it over a 4-year period, right, and let's arbitrarily break it into 25% chunks, right, over that, you could present to the voters an option that would allow not an entire increase of whatever the tax requirement's gonna be to pay for this, but you could spread that over 4 years, so it'd be a slow climb to that amount, and allowing new growth to potentially offset some of that requirement. Not advocating for one or the other. If you're telling me the construction is gonna take 2 years, I'm gonna need to borrow through the town council probably 60 to 90% of the money year one. Right? And then, and then we're gonna have to be putting that back into the tax rolls. But if we're doing a 4-year bill, maybe we're taking 25%, we're borrowing it that way, and we're telling the voters, year one, it's a $250 increase. Year two, it's a $250 increase. Year three, right, to get what you want. Yes, realizing the time value of money says, if I paid for it all today, it would be cheaper than tomorrow. But that's only one part of the argument.
And that's for you all to decide.
Absolutely, I think it's just something to consider.
You'll have to look at that short-term piece, how you take it down. But ultimately, whichever option that you decide on, you're still going to have to commit for that full piece up front.
Yeah, you're right, but it's how we borrow them.
Understood.
Right? Because if I have 4 years to borrow the money to do it, right, and then I could potentially create a case that would be maybe positive, but it's going to be an increase, or tell everybody, hey, it's $1,000, if that's what the number is. That's speculation on my part.
That scenario is going to be like a 2-year versus a 4-year.
Yes.
But I would be careful, only because in terms of adding that into the calculation of the criteria of being something favorable or not, because you don't know what the borrowing amount is going to be. This isn't going to be asked for a borrowing until over a year. And you don't know, you may say the environment may change, because we really want to borrow the whole.
It could be, but we also we can also issue those, and if rates become favorable, we could refinance those in the future as well, or hold it for every third. So, but we're constantly in the bond market, and we just went out. We have an excellent credit rating with S&P, and we got exceptional. We got 3.4 on $10 million notes just yesterday. So doing really well there. But I guess what I'm looking at is how you create an argument that becomes affordable to the folks that are willing to pay for it.
Yeah. I've not seen where bonding, because it's speculative at this point, that you put that on criteria.
Absolutely.
That's all.
It may come back where it's, may be better to borrow the money all over front.
We also have to balance quantitative and qualitative too, because 4 years of construction or 5 years of construction and phasing for an entire generation of students.
That's a whole class.
We could lose
I was just gonna
students
say, as a
forever.
parent, this time, the
Yeah,
advent
by the way,
process,
that's one thing we have to consider too. But people do it. It's just we have to consider that.
That's Bella and Johnson's entire high school in construction. If they did that, that's something to think about.
All these options are for you to consider.
Yeah.
They're big decisions. You'll have to decide this by the time we get to the next fall.
Right, that's the good news. We're not going to be asking anybody to make any picks, right, as part of this initial submission.
I think it's a good discussion to have.
It is, and all of these things, right, it's good to get them out of the table, right, but all of these things, when we get through this next stage, right, which is over the summer, this 12-week period, that we have to go through the next, right, as Ron described, the PSR phase. All of these pros and cons, right, we should be identifying, right, and there should be a good, healthy discussion on what all of these things mean to you as a community, right? Not just as, both from an educational perspective, like you suggested, John, and then also, some of these other more nuanced type things, Mike, that you're talking about as well. And so those things should all be put on the table. And, some of them may be able to be quantified, because, it's hard data. And some of them you're going to have to make value decisions on what you need, and want as a community.
So we'll go over, once we get through this period, we'll give a lot of information to the public now before summer. That beginning in July or late June, we'll talk about criteria, what you all feel should be the criteria. We'll give you a list of the kinds of criteria that other towns have used, and collectively between Durham and anything else we've seen. So we can start to touch on it.
So, educationally, this is that magic spreadsheet that we just talked about a little while ago. And I'm not gonna bore you to death, but I am gonna just shrink this down for the sake of, can you all see that?
See the red.
All right. Let's go back up. So, as we go through the spreadsheet, what we are trying to do is balance what your needs are in the school with what the MSBA guidelines are. They're very good guidelines. So one of the big questions is, we brought out measuring tape, here's Heinz. How big is every room? Because this is your opportunity to right-size these rooms. If you go through and you look at all these red spaces from 521 square feet to 759, 694, I mean, how do these numbers come up with, right? So what we're trying to do is go through this and find out what is the actual size you need for everything that you're doing. We're gonna make some rooms bigger, we're gonna make some rooms smaller. As we go down, there are different sections of this spreadsheet. So the first one is your core academics, like we talked about. The second one is like art and music. So everything gets numbers associated with it. We're looking at like how many students are in there, how many students take advantage of these programs, what kind of space do you need. If you have 50 kids in a band program, you need a space of a certain size. If you regularly have 100 kids, you need a space that's bigger than that. So that's what we're doing. That's what the district has been working with us in all of these user group meetings. We also take a look at special education. You have a pretty great program here, actually, for all of your learners in North Attleboro. Special education not only gets reviewed by the MSBA, but gets reviewed by the Department of Elementary and Secondary School Education from the state of Massachusetts. So they will be looking at this and make sure not only do we have the right spaces that we need for your program, but we want to right-size those spaces as well. We want to make sure that they're consistent with the core academic spaces. We also want to make sure that they're equipped and can perform for the students' needs. So this is a pretty long process that we've been going through. And it contains everything from special education to science labs. It also gets into vocations and technologies, like what are these hands-on, and you'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. You know, what is this multidisciplinary hands-on authentic learning process that we're talking about? How do you take a room that used to be just a general classroom and now make sure it's right-sized and equipped for the learning that's going to take place within the ed plan? And so some of those spaces get really funky names. Other ones is kind of like digital music, digital art. So you know, how do those programs tie in to all of your new spaces? And there are some spaces that we started talking about that you'll see become zero, because after further analysis, there's just another way to do it. There's another way to get there without actually building that space. And that's what this process is all about. Not overbuilding and not underbuilding. And so when we get into things like health and physical education, we want to right-size everything again. We want to go through and make sure we have all the spaces that you have now. Are they too big? Are they too little? Are there spaces you're missing? For instance, does the gym, in terms of all your athletics, does that support you and the community, as not only as a school, but for community use? And so we're going to continue to go through that. All that's going to go right through the summer. Same thing with the media center. Like right now, you see it's a nice green media center. Lots of space in here, but how do you really want to use it? How can it be broken down? How can we take some of that media center space that's allowable within the state and kind of spread that around so these extended learning spaces, your library becomes almost like a hub, if you will, of learning throughout the entire school. And so, same thing with auditorium and drama. If you take a look at your auditorium today, it's got 299 seats. You know, is that sufficient? Do you need more seats? Do you want more seats? What kind of theater do you want? There's all sorts of different levels of theater, right? There's the ones where you can put a Broadway play on, and then there's the ones that it's more of kind of a performance space. And so then there are drama classrooms. Do you need a big theater to have a little drama performance? Can these little drama performances happen for the entire school day? Like it's impromptu sort of like little presentations that take place. So again, right-sizing every space, going through all the user groups. We met with the curriculum and instructional leaders. We've met with other leaders in the school. We've met with students. We've met with the faculty. We've talked to user groups. It's been great. And a lot of information, and a lot of people very excited about this. And they're also excited about making sure we're not overbuilding or underbuilding. You'll notice a theme there. On the medical side of things, and the administration, and the guidance, and all of the specialists and support staff that you have here at the school, we want to make sure that they have the space that they need. A lot of that space can be shared. So what we've been talking about is how do we make the best bang for our buck in terms of meeting space, in terms of conference rooms. When parents come in, how are they located within the building? So all these conversations are taking place with the goal of making sure we have everything that we need. So when we submit this to the MSBA, it is relatively what you're going to need. And again, when we get into the fall, that's when we've got to nail it down. That's when we got to say, this is it. This is how big our building's going to be. Is it going to be 2 stories? Is it going to be 3 stories? Do we prefer the ad reno? Do we prefer the repair only? Do we prefer a new option? And custodial maintenance is also part of that whole discussion. Right now, you've got outbuildings. You can continue to have outbuildings, right? Because that's part of the discussion. How much do you put into the building itself? Can we do something a little bit less expensively outside the building? And then what I'm trying to get to here is, so then we come down and we get to basically a size of the building. And right now, looking at all of your spaces as they add up, we're currently at about 222,000 square feet. This is not done yet. This is still a work in progress. Your existing school is 175,000 square feet. If you look at the MSBA, strictly look at their guidelines and say, okay, for 1,025 students, their guideline would say it should be at or around 198,000 square feet. Which kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, you have 6 modular classrooms added onto the side of your building. So obviously the modules would go away in any kind of solution that we come up with. So for a capacity of 1,025 students, you're about 20,000 square feet too small to begin.
I think it's important also, just like we talked about the guidelines. So the guidelines are very, in this sense, because it's a standardized spreadsheet, are really based on a very generic set of assumptions and don't necessarily take into account district important factors associated with district. For example, an easy one is special education. So special education, right, is different district to district based on what the offerings and requirements are, and changes how it's a deviation from that standard guideline, and something that's generally accepted by the MSBA and ultimately has to go through a secondary review process with DESI. So we just want to go and say, I think, that while the guidelines in terms of this baseline model may say that, we also are conscious of the fact that we've got to keep it within the guideline, but those guidelines are subject to change based on what some of the particular district requirements are.
And what that means is there may be things that we add that they don't have in their guideline. The MSBA says we're comfortable with that. We will support that. We will allow that. We will fund that. And then there are other things that you have to weigh and say is it's important to our community. So every project is completely different. I think Mike Borg is completely correct. You need to look at this from all sorts of different viewpoints and decide what's best for North Attleboro. You have a very unique educational plan, which, by the way, we kind of think is fantastic. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that tonight, but no other community has that. There could be some that have something like it, but every project is very unique. And that's why every solution we do is very unique. And the way you'll fund it may be very unique. Sounds like Mike's on top of that, come up with some creative financing. That's the goal, that's the purpose, and that's pretty much what was on our agenda for this evening. In the timeline, again, you'll hear a little bit more about it if you want to join in the community meeting tonight. But the timeline is we're looking at June. We're going to try to finish everything that we're doing by mid to late June. And and then there are some very specific dates we try to meet. We may finish our work, and then there'll be a little more comments or something that'll get polished up, something along those lines. So basically what we're talking about is by the time school ends, we're gonna have this first hurdle. We'll be over that first hurdle. When everybody comes back in the fall, beginning of September, we're gonna be right up against ready to put in the second hurdle. So we have a couple of community meetings, one tonight, and then one on June 18th. And the one on June 18th, we're gonna talk about scheduling the summer and maybe some events, and just trying to keep everybody in tune. For anybody listening to that at home, this is where this really starts becoming real. And so the more we can kind of participate in all of this, community members can come out and participate in all of this, the more knowledgeable you'll be in terms of the rhyme and the reason as to why a lot of these things take place. It doesn't just come out of a box, it doesn't just come out of a drawer, and we certainly don't have like cookie cutter things that every community gets and this is what it costs and that's what it is. This is a very unique process for North Attleboro. This is a great time to really come out, participate, listen, ask questions, and fully understand what the process is.
Ron, I think in the 5 minutes that we have, it would be good for you to go through the preview of the presentation that we're going to show at 6.
I just feel like with that spreadsheet, it's a lot for this audience to digest, obviously. Just 400 some odd rows of cells there, right? A lot of data, a lot of information. What we probably care about is, you know, speaking for myself, the English department, you know, arts and sciences, gymnasium, current square footage, recommended square footage, current utilization, future utilization. Like just, you know what I mean? Like kind of bigger buckets, but like what we have today versus what we're modeling out these options. So I think that would have more meaning for me personally. Yeah. I understand you're walking us through this process. It's great, but I don't know. I'm trying to think through like we're being asked to make some decisions in a future point. You know, I'm not going to go row by row. I'm not going to know if the classroom number 357 is it's too small or too big, right? But I'm going to want to know if we have enough square footage for our, you know, for our kind of science department.
We can break it.
I think our educational plan is going to get to that for you, that we're going to start to talk about. It's more of the narrative of like, what do we do in the building, how do we do it, and what spaces we need to accommodate all of our students.
I actually think going through this will help you in that, not just the ed plan piece, but how we take the part that Michelle and Pete and their team are going to go and present tonight, which is really more focused on the educational perspective. And then kind of supplemental to that is how we've taken that information and translated it. And I think that'll be helpful for you, hopefully.
I think the ed plan is going to be condensed from what you've seen there anyways. Not all of those classrooms are.
Yeah, we wouldn't present that to the community. We're going to present that to you, the school building committee.
Yep.
And we can break it down into categories. And, you know, you should, I mean, we would encourage looking at all this and say, okay, we fully understand that, you know, we go from 46 to 37, and then we've got some other spaces that we need to get in the building. It's kind of like a good exercise, but we can certainly break it down in categories.
But it's important to note that for the PDP, which is being submitted in June or July, that we will need a vote and a sign-off authorizing submission, as Ron said. It's 80% there, it's going to be refined after that, but the MSBA does ask for authorization for us to submit it, so just a heads up.
Chris, from who, would that be the school building committee?
It's the school building committee signs off, the superintendent and Mike Boyd, the budget, the executive, town executive.
So one thing we do want to do before we get into this is we need to take a vote tonight. We needed to take a vote tonight about the fact that we have investigated all of the sites with the town and the decision from the working group, and I think we presented this once to the school building committee as well, but that meeting wasn't posted, so we do need to take an official vote and use the existing high school site as our project site.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
What does that mean? sorry.
So just, we, as part of the process, we had to explore, MSBA requires it, and it's good practice, to explore other sites in town.
Oh, yeah. Like
Could they
across
support,
the street.
could they support a building? And so we worked with the town on that, did a lot of analysis, and we all came to the conclusion, which is like the current site is the best site, maybe even the only site, I should say. So we need to kind of go with the affirmative.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
Makes sense. So the motion in a second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Abstentions? That motion passes.
Okay, I'm going to turn around so everyone can see me. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the educational plan for the new new or renovated North Attleboro High School. And Principal Haviland and I have spent many hours with the curriculum instructional leaders of the high school. They represent every department of the high school: art, music, English, science, business, everyone who has a stake in this building. We've also met with students, we've met with the full faculty, we've, through the forums, listened to community input, and really tried to take that all back to our curriculum instructional leaders and start to create a vision for the high school. One key thing that I think is at the center of all of our work is North Attleboro is a community that is steeped in educational excellence. We have such pride in our community and the education that we currently deliver in North Attleboro. So everything we talked about in terms of this new education plan is rooted in that pride in our community and educational excellence. We also recognize there's a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to meet the needs of students and think in terms of what does their future look like. Because the traditional classrooms that we may have gone to school in, sitting in rows, practicing math problems on a chalkboard, they don't exist anymore. And Pete can speak to this, but we've heard over and over again that businesses are looking for students with a different skill set now. We're looking for students who can communicate, collaborate, solve problems, and really contribute to society. So as we started to think about this new education plan, we've really been working on it for over 2 years, and this is a visual that was adopted by the district about 2 years ago when we really focused on a new strategic plan. The new strategic plan at the center has deeper learning. All that means is that providing students with deep, meaningful opportunities that are authentic in the real world is at the heart of everything we do in the schools. We challenge every principal across the district to think about how can we bring more opportunities for students in all of these areas. Developing academic mindsets, collaborative work, communicating effectively, learning how to learn, thinking critically, solving complex problems, because we know we want every student to leave our school system with those skills. The bottom is our core pillars that are at the base of everything we do in North Attleboro. 2 important ones you've heard me talk about a lot over the past 2 years is success for all students. That means we're including every student, special education students, students that are first language learners. Every student in our school community is going to be welcomed and feel a sense of belonging and have a place in our program. And then enhancing deeper learning is basically the stepping stone that leads to all of this at the top. So we wrote this as a story, talking about the history of North Attleboro, right from the first Little Red Schoolhouse, where students went to school in North Attleboro. Part of our tradition is for every student to visit the Little Red Schoolhouse and understand the history of where we were and where we've come. And we wrote a vision for the future that really talks about now where do we go next. Pete, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. After Michelle delivers and shares the district's strategic plan, the conversation we're going to have tonight is when the high school really started this work a couple of summers ago. It was more of a kind of post-COVID response with recognizing what students needed. But it's also, as Michelle said, it's very much based on research from what colleges and employers are telling us about insufficiently skilled students and employees. And so that's our role and responsibility to remedy that problem and work with them. And so we're going to talk about how we started last 2 summers ago. The where are we going question you'll see completely throughout the entire education division document that is going to be coming out. So where are we going ultimately is, begs the question of, like, well, what's our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? And so we need to do more and provide more. And this piece right here, I'm going to talk about it tonight, but the best question a kid can ask a teacher is, why do I need to learn this? And it's a polite question, but it's definitely a difficult question sometimes for even the best of teachers to answer. And that's what we're doing as a school, is to make sure that everybody knows why they're teaching, what they're teaching, and that they understand what they want all students to know, understand, and ultimately be able to do. And that's the equation of successful education. So we'll talk through those pieces. Authentic learning is a shift in a lot of ways, but not a change in the school, because authentic learning is just an opportunity to go, essentially short term from the whiteboard to the workbench. It gives kids an opportunity to take knowledge and turn it into deeper understanding, to deeper learning, and then apply those skills and develop and produce and create. And we feel like that's the deepest level of learning a student can enjoy, and it puts them in a better situation to be ready for high school. As Michelle said, we rallied students and staff. We really saw input throughout the course of a year, and then we created that new mission. And so the next slide is this one. Sorry. We're going to talk about a student quote, and so in our effort to work with students and staff, there were several quotes that the things that students told us, but this one stood up the most. It was the most compelling, and we'll read this out loud tonight, and you'll hear it later on. But it speaks very much to everything that teachers feel. It speaks very much to everything that parents feel about the futures for their children. It speaks very much to what students are thinking about and worried about and hoping for. And then ultimately the last piece is, this is our public commitment to
Will that alarm go off, Peter?
What's that?
Will that alarm go off?
Yeah, they go around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to finish up, the last piece is we're going to commit to this mission statement, and we believe that this mission statement is when we embed the instruction of core social, emotional, and academic skills across the entire curriculum. So every teacher, every course, every class period, every year, every term, all the time, is that if we embed this instruction, then our students will understand themselves in a better way, deeper way, so we're more prepared for whatever the purpose of the high school. So that's the mark of quality education. That's the goal for a school mission for our entire high school program.
I think we can probably skip over a couple of these slides. We want to really explain what this vision is to tonight's audience. You're going to get a 50-page document from us that explains all of this in great detail and with really specifics. But in general, we've taken those same concepts of what do we want our students to graduate North Attleboro High School with and turn them into questions that students will explore while they're here at high school. Three of our curriculum instructional leaders are going to walk us through exactly what does that look like. And we landed on the phrase authentic learning, and I think that's one of the most important things for everyone to understand tonight. Authentic learning involves focusing on everyday, relatable experiences. So students will take what they learn in a class and then have the opportunity to apply it. And when we realized that needs to be at the crux of our school, we started to think about, well, then what does the school look like? Because a regular traditional classroom may be a place where students can learn some of those skills, but how do we apply them in the real world? And, okay, thank you. That led us to write the ed plan. So we took these questions that students will answer. Who am I? Who are we as a collective school? Where am I going? And then how can I impact the world? And students will start on a journey where the first 2 years will be that foundational level instruction, core courses that we know every student needs to have to be successful as a student. And then it will morph into junior and senior year where students will start to be able to personalize their experiences. They'll work through elective courses and think about, well, what do I have interest in and how can I